Maybe. Hey, everybody. This is Drew and JC, and we are here for another episode of The Watchers. And this installment is very cult cinema. It's definitely a movie episode, so I hope you guys are still in the mood for that after last week's episode with Bill. Um, we'll introduce our awesome guest after the introduction, which I will play right now.
Welcome to the Watchers Podcast Network, the only source for film, TV, horror, music, pro wrestling, stand-up comedy, and the paranormal, all in one channel. If you're a fan of our shows, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
What is the best? You got the best, the hardest part in the world.
I forgot how hooky that one was.
Yeah.
I have a cult cinema specific intro, but I lost the original file and I have to edit it because the first guest that we had for that version of the show, their name is still somehow inside of it. So we had to go with our generic one tonight. But without further ado, our guest tonight, Brad Henderson. Thank you for joining us. If you don't mind, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. No, my name is Brad, and I do acquisitions and producing at Vinegar Syndrome, or used to do at Vinegar Syndrome, and now I do acquisitions and produce at TerraVision. And I've been with TerraVision since the beginning. We started in October of 2020, as far as working behind the scenes, Ryan and myself, and then we released our first film a year later, October of 2021, with WNUF Halloween Blu-ray. And then since then, we've done I don't even know how many releases we have out, like 50 maybe. I don't even keep track anymore. That's what I do. We specialize in, of course, horror movie soundtracks on cassette, CD, and vinyl. And TerraVision also has a few brick and mortar stores in Savannah, Georgia. We have one in Chicago as well. We have a museum dedicated to oddities and curiosities, which main focal point is real life crime, true crime stuff. We have John Wayne Gacy's real brain on display, along with all remaining 200 and some of his paintings, all authentic. It's a weird dive into our world, but we're mainly known for the home video side, but we do so much other things behind the scenes, especially my partner Ryan, who created the company. So
that is incredible to hear. I didn't know anything about the oddities stuff. How did you come to possess the brain of John Wayne
well,
Gacy?
I mean, that's definitely Ryan's expertise. He runs all of that. I pretty much have zero to do with any of it, mainly because I do the home video side. But Ryan is good friends with John Wayne Gacy's sister, and she obtained everything after he was basically after the FBI disposed of everything, after they collected everything from his home. It all went to her, that they didn't hold or destroy. And then his brain, during that time, just because science wasn't, we were still even learning at that point, they did a test to see if there was like a repetitive piece in serial killers with their brain. So they did tests on different serial killers' brains to see if there was something that they could recognize. They didn't dispose of it, and they kept it and she had it, and then now Ryan has it on display in Chicago.
That's really cool. You guys are
Yeah.
She said
definitely
chilling at her house.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, Ryan at the museum, I mean, we have Charles Manson's death row pants. We have Jim Jones glasses that he wore. We have the original Flavor Aid packets that were used in the massacre. Yeah, everything in the museum is real. There's nothing fake or recreated aside from their Ed Gein exhibit because nothing actually survived from Ed Gein, despite what people say. And they basically created the museum to debunk the Ed Gein stuff because there's so many things like he made human uh, skin with like lamps and clothing,
yeah.
and none of that's true. And then because nothing actually survived because the police burned it down. So that's the only thing that's fake to recreate the Ed Gein home. But yeah, everything in the museum, I believe, at least 98% of it is all authentic and real. Nothing's a prop or a replica.
Wow, that's awesome to hear. You said that was in Chicago?
There's two. There's one in Chicago, and then there's one in Savannah. Savannah is the bigger one because that's the OG, and it's been there the longest. Chicago, I helped open that store with Ryan. We also have a rental store there with like 10,000 movies that you can rent. So it's a rental shop in Chicago and Milwaukee, Bucktown. And yeah, it's the record. There's a record store there, a museum, and the rental video rental place. So
That's awesome. My wife has been trying to get me to go to Chicago for years, and I guess now I have a reason, and she's gonna regret
that and Jimmy's
it.
Pizza. And Jimmy's Pizza's in there too. And Jimmy's Pizza, I think, was recently just I think top 5 pizzas in the world, or at least Chicago, maybe. But yeah, no, Jimmy's Pizza's there. It's great. But yeah, no, you have a good reason why it's fully built out, and things are always changing too. It's being constantly updated. In Savannah, we have 4 stores. There's one at the mall. There's the Starlin. But yeah, I mean, there we have on the river. There's the museum, and that also has a store per se with records and movies and sell our own stuff. And yeah, it's a rad place. Yeah, and there's also pinball. I think Ryan owns. I think he claims to be. I don't know how accurate it is, but he claims to own the most arcade machines in the world, and I believe him because he has like at the museum there's like 50 pinball machines it seems. They date back from like the 60s to more modern stuff that's being made, and then at the mall he has a whole room dedicated to arcade games, and there's probably, I don't know, it seems like there's 50 in there too. And then he just has a ton in storage. He grabs old games and then repairs them and then puts them back out there. He has stuff that's like from the 50s.
Oh, it's a really unique thing that I didn't expect to hear when we started the conversation. Actually, that's cool to
Yeah,
it's cool
we're a
to
little
learn
bad
that.
at promoting it, but it doesn't, like, people think it's cool and we appreciate that, but it doesn't really cross over. Like the museum's kind of its own thing. But yeah, I mean, um Ryan, Ryan has a clothing company called Never Not Goth. He has yeah, we had the museum. I'm sure there's some. I mean, obviously, Crave Face Records has been around for almost 25 years, and he has like 80 bands that signed to that. The Appleseed Cast, P.W. Walsh. Those are all like Ryan's. Yeah, that's his label. He was in a band called Dream End, Marshmallow Ghosts, Big Black Super Moth Rainbow, something like that. But yeah, he's a traveling musician. Yeah, him and his wife they just kill it. They're so busy all the time. And it's kind of crazy. But yeah, he's got his hands kind of in everything.
So I'm curious because we now live in these modern times where brick and mortars are pretty much a thing of the past, but a lot of these boutique media companies seem to be thriving with them. You just had talked about the amount that you guys have available, and I believe Vinegar Syndrome has a couple archives open. Um, what what are some of the challenges that you guys are dealing with, with a brick and mortar location versus the internet?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the internet does more, but the brick and mortar stores, they're in very touristy areas too, so that definitely helps. Being Chicago and Savannah, Savannah's just tourists, pretty much it seems. Um, so that does pretty well, because one, people are shocked, but also there's a lot of records and music, and record stores fairly do well. And that's essentially what drives the business. There's not a ton of Blu-rays and DVDs bought at these stores. It's mainly records and like memorabilia and stuff like that. Most A lot of stores, like, I mean, if it was just home video, it probably wouldn't be open because those stores don't do very well. I mean, Grindhouse, you know, they closed up their shop in Knoxville. You know,
Yeah, we
we
talked
have
to him a couple weeks ago.
yeah, we have Viper Video here that took over Shelby, but Shelby struggles just to pay rent. I think he's still open. I'm pretty sure he is. But yeah, you have to have other stuff. You have to have books or records or something, because home media is not going to keep the doors open, just because it is such a, a niche thing. People just want to stream stuff, and it's not like rental stores, which would keep it open. I mean, we have a rental store, like I said, in Chicago, but it's not something that, if it was just the rental store, it would have closed in its first 3 months. Physical media is not going to keep a business alive like that. Just the same thing as Movie Stop all closed down, GameStop stopped, like closed up half their shops. So it is disappearing, and I imagine it will just be internet, unless companies have something else that they're selling. End of the year, or end of the year in Austin, they do fairly well, but they're mainly a record shop. They have a big home movie or home media selection, but I mean, they're primarily a record store, and I think that's maybe the crossover, is that hopefully more record stores, because those are in abundance. There's a record store everywhere. That they kind of, depending on the record store where it's located, but a lot of your punk metal, that sort of like new age rock and those types of things, a lot of those people buy physical media. So I do see maybe a transition in that if they're open to it. But yeah, I've there's a ton of record stores that I see carrying movies now, and mainly because a lot of it's our stuff, because they buy the records, the soundtracks from us, and then they see they have movies, and they start putting them on the shelves, and they start selling, so they keep ordering more. And it's not a lot, we're not talking like thousands here, but couple hundred orders here and there, and they're starting to carry home movies or home videos, so that's pretty neat.
Yeah, that crossover definitely exists, but for me at least, I think the appeal has been created by people like you, by putting out vinyl and cassettes along with the films that you guys are putting out. I know that I have purchased a cassette player, and I have several friends who have like
Yeah.
hit up all of the Goodwills and stuff and thrift shops looking for devices to grab these cassette tapes. And so our I guess foray into that part of physical media literally started from collecting titles from Terror Vision and Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah,
So
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's getting bigger. I mean, when I very first started at Vinegar Syndrome, I mean, it wasn't what it is right now. I mean, they were still struggling as a company, because they were just new. It took a while for something to take off there, but when it did, it progressively got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and that was probably I would say the big impact was maybe at the end of 2019 was when things started to change at Vinegar Syndrome. And, things didn't slow down with COVID because, in a way, it helped fuel a lot of business because people were home and they wanted to watch movies. And I think a lot of kind of home video companies thrived during that time because a lot of people had sales to help people out, because we were all cooped up. But yeah, things started really kind of kicking off. And yeah, I mean, I think that it just depends. I got I mean, I've always bought movies from the time I was just a little kid buying VHS tapes. I mean, I had when I was younger, I probably had close to 10,000 just in my room, and I was like probably 15. So yeah, my parents always bought physical media. So Beta was the first thing that we had, and VHS. Then we had CEDs. Then we had you know laser discs after that because CEDs didn't last too long because they were shitty. Um, and then yeah, my mom bought our first DVD player for like $1,000 because that's what they cost when they first hit.
Yeah.
DVDs were like $50.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I bought a Blu-ray player. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I had an HD DVD player because I didn't know who was going to win that battle. So I had HD DVD player and a Blu-ray player at the same time, and collected both mediums because they were both in competition for at least a year and a half, 2 years. So yeah, I've always bought movies. So yeah, it's when kind of the boutique thing started, that was something that I wanted to do. Like before it started to kick off, because I had a lot of inspiration from Anchor Bay and kind of Blue Underground what they were doing, and I looked into it, and probably I would say maybe 2010, somewhere around there. And I just realized I couldn't afford it because I was in college and my wife was in college, and we were struggling just to make ends meet with rent and paying for school. And I just realized it was too much of a gamble to do it. And honestly, I didn't know really what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to like re-release movies. And yeah, it was probably 2013, 2014, whatever. I think it was 2013 maybe. And I was just like on Amazon, just surfing, just finding movies, trying to look for stuff. And I came across a listing for Night Train to Terror, and it kind of shocked me that that movie was on Blu-ray because I just, not too many people talked about it at the time. And then I saw it was a company, and I was like, this has got to be a bootleg or something. This is weird. And then looked into it, and it was a legitimate company. And I emailed him that night and, just said, "Hey, like, you guys are crazy. Like, what's going on? Like, this is very interesting to me." And I made friends with James and Brandon, who are still at VS. And, yeah, we became friendly and they started sending me stuff. And I was, kind of writing reviews before, this kind of podcast and, websites doing physical media kind of took off. And yeah, I told them kind of my passion and what I wanted to do, and they kind of welcomed that. And then we started working together shortly after. I was a beta tester for Exploitation TV, which was the Vinegar Syndrome streaming service. And I did that, and that was during that launch. And yeah, I just started working. I don't know, probably with them like around maybe 2015, I would say, doing odds and ends, and then eventually full time, and did acquisitions and producing full time. And I mean, I probably produced like maybe 100 discs out of there, maybe. I don't know. I never kept track, but it was a lot. Uh,
What are some of the titles that you're like most proud to have brought to them into the company? So I feel like, and we won't get super deep into it, but I feel like since you've kind of left, the titles have gotten more mainstream, I guess, so to speak, and kind of some of the stuff that I found through earlier Vinegar Syndrome releases were harder to find. It's the shot on video stuff. It felt more like I was discovering something or finding something for the first time versus over the last couple of years, it seems like everything is so just out of mainstream, and it's no longer things that I am finding for the first time, but things that I'm comfortable with or have known for decades. Uh, Showgirls, Beastmaster, fantastic releases, but kind of what drew me into the company was the lesser known stuff, the harder to find stuff. So what titles are you kind of most proud to have put out?
Yeah. I mean, they're still releasing stuff that I acquired, because I mean it takes so long to put things out. I mean, there's stuff that I acquired for them that's not even out yet. But I mean, for my biggest acquisitions there that I worked on, that I was responsible for, um, you know, Beastmaster was definitely a big one. Fade to Black, um, Spookies, of course. That's what really solidified my job, was Spookies. Um, yeah, I mean, a lot of the action stuff, a lot of Cynthia Rothrock, you know, I would like to take a lot of credit that I, kind of kicked off the action side of that stuff with like the BSAs, because I really pushed for action. Curtis did too, and I think, when one of my very first acquisitions was like in probably 2000, say maybe 15, 16, I had LA Wars, and that was a big one.
Okay.
And it was funny because no one really seemed to wanted to do it at first, because I brought them, because essentially basically what it was is I said, I know where material is, I know where rights are, and I don't know if they fully took me seriously, so they kind of just said, well, if you can bring some films to us, that's fine. And I brought 5 like in the next 3 days, and I think I shocked them by that. And it was like Splatter University, Flesh Eating Mothers, The Suckling, um, something else, and then LA Wars. And they accepted the 4 right off the bat, but LA Wars was, they were like, we don't know, like, pitch it to us. And I did, and it was like 3 lines or something I wrote, and then they said, okay, we'll do it. And then it went to the BSA line because they were trying to mold that a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the homegrown horror stuff, Winter Beast, Fatal Exam, those were big, Dead Girls. I mean, I guess I could look. That would help me a little bit. I mean, Righting Wrongs was a big one. Voyage of the Rock Aliens. Alien Private Eye was a huge passion project of mine. Um, uh, uh, Scared to Death was a big passion project. I would say Blades was definitely one. Killer's Delight, Through the Fire, a lot of the Mexican stuff. I really, that was a big thing that I felt that I brought in. But yeah, those, I mean, Pledge Night was a huge. Severed Arm, I didn't do the full acquisition on Severed Arm, because we found out, even though it was considered public domain for decades and decades, we found out it was actually owned by MGM during a search under a different title, I believe. And that was a huge project of mine, because that was, the Severed Arm was a film that was the first film that I wanted to do when I was thinking about creating my label. I wanted to do the Severed Arm first, because it's one of my like top 10 movies of all time. And then the other ones were House of the Dead, which Vinegar Syndrome released, which I got to help out on. But yeah, it's those. And then with with TerraVision, I mean, some of the stuff that we were able to do so far, I mean, we're still kind of starting out, even though we're in about 3 years. But Door was a big one, because that was one that I was trying to get, and luckily, we had some assistance, and that was a film that I've loved for a long time, the whole trilogy, really. But yeah, Door was a big one. And I would say the City Lights stuff, because I worked, if we date back to even before Vinegar Syndrome, I worked for Wild Eye Releasing for a little while with Rob. And the Visual Vengeance label that kicked off with them, a lot of those first titles are my acquisitions from years ago. But yeah, I for some of that stuff, the City Lights movies, that was a big one because when I was at Wild Eye, I wanted to resurrect the City Lights label. And we were going for it, but we didn't. It was a long process of trying to find out who actually owned the films. And that was something I was able to accomplish at TerraVision. So I was super excited about that. But yeah, Papatopoulos was a big one for me because I saw that years and years ago, and it was like through Netflix DVD in the mail. And I watched the documentary and I fell in love with it. And then a few years ago, like probably maybe 2019 to 2000, 2020, I was told somebody about it, and I looked for it on DVD, and it was like $100. And I realized Papatopoulos was out of print, and I was like, "Well, that's crazy. It's like one of the best documentaries ever made." So that was something I was super excited to bring back, just because it was so obscure at that point. It played on Netflix, the DVD was readily available for so many years, but then it just kind of disappeared. So yeah, I'm really excited about a lot of that stuff. I think some of the biggest titles is some of the Indonesian stuff we've done for TerraVision is like Srigala. That was probably like a 7-year project for me of locating the rights, locating the elements, getting them scanned, doing a new subtitling because movie is never released anywhere on home video ever in the world, even in its home country. It had a VCD at one time, but it was a bootleg in Indonesia. But it played in theaters and primarily on television because Indonesia doesn't have like a video market. So yeah, Srigala, that was a huge thing because it's a worldwide movie's been out for like 45 years and it's just now saw its home video release in the US of all places, not even in its home country. So that was a long, I mean, like I said, it was probably 7 years total of trying to get that movie out. It was one of my things that I tried when I was at when I tried when I was at Vinegar Syndrome, and finally I was able to finish it when I was at TerraVision. So
I have not
Was
seen
that
that movie, and it looks so cool. And I was
yeah,
just,
no, it's really bizarre. It's a weird movie, but yeah, it gets classified as a Friday the 13th knockoff. It is, but it's not that until the last 20 minutes. It's something else until then. But
yeah, I love the VHS that you have too. The just
yeah, Ryan's a big VHS guy. He's got so many. I mean, he probably has. Oh man, probably like 80,000 tapes. It seems he has so many. It's ridiculous. And he's a big VHS collector, so he's been doing that, and that's he always likes to put them back on. We have another round of VHS that we're doing here later this year. So
Oh, cool. I'll definitely keep my eyes out on that. I got into VHS again recently, and again, probably because a lot of the boutiques have kind of realized that some of us will still kick out and shill some money for them. But now, what
yeah,
is it? Terrifier 2, you could buy at Walmart in VHS. So
yeah,
I'm,
I know.
I'm kind of excited that maybe that format might have some type of resurgence. We won't have to pay $400 for a new VCR every time one breaks. I don't have
Yeah.
the ability to fix mine.
I don't know if it will take off. I actually talked to Walmart about that because I didn't know that they were doing that, and we did it. We've done some deals with Walmart so far through TerraVision, which I consider a huge accomplishment because there's no there's no boutique labels aside from maybe Screen Factory in Walmart. So I mean, Wild Eye has their DVD, or they used to have their DVDs, and I think a company called ITV or ITN distribution, they do DVDs in some of the Walmarts. But that was a huge accomplishment. When that hit, I just hit them up and I'm like, hey, I was like, we do tapes. but they seemed like it was classified as like special merch, so it's not actually a physical item, like a physical media item. I mean, it's considered like special merchandise, but obviously it sold really well for them. So we've talked to them again about maybe doing some VHS tapes to see how they would do.
Oh
I don't
wow,
know. Who knows?
that that would be really cool. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. I'm not a big VHS person anymore. Like I said, I've sold pretty much all of mine, and their rest are out the door. Um, but yeah, I think it's kind of funny if Walmart, of all places, carries VHS tapes, and people shit on Walmart, but they're one of the companies that may keep physical media alive. So
right, especially now with the deal that they have with Scream Factory to put those steel books out, and Best Buy getting rid of their physical media. Walmart's basically all I have. I live in a very small town
Desert.
right in the right in the middle of Pennsylvania, so I don't have any cities or boutiques or anything that I can go to. Walmart, and if the FYE at the mall is still open, that's the only other place I can go to buy these in person. I
yeah,
actually I drove to the archive in Connecticut from Pennsylvania just to check it out and buy movies there. It ended up being a 13-hour trip. So I'm already now thinking how I'm going to plan a trip to Georgia and Chicago to check these out, because I was
yeah,
gonna go to Grindhouse until I had found out that they had closed their
yeah,
store too.
yeah. They
Uh,
closed up. Yeah. But yeah, I know it's cool that I know Walmart gets a lot of shit because they're a big $1 billion corporation, but their physical media people there, they're very into kind of what is going on. And I don't think a lot of people understand is they'll shit like on Best Buy and big box stores and stuff like that. I mean, obviously you want to support Diabolic and Grindhouse, Orbit, all those places, but the general public is buying mainly that media that's at Walmart, not us, for the most part. Um, and the thing is that if those companies carry, and this is something that a lot of people didn't understand when people were like kind of cheering that Best Buy stopped carrying movies, is that hurts companies like a lot, to the point where we have to slow down our product, because if you have big box stores like that, like Walmart and Best Buy buying 20,000 units of your movie, that pays your bill for the almost entire year for for what we do. And now you take that out of the equation, it actually hurts financially quite a bit. Arrow was in Walmart, and now they're or Best Buy, and now they're not in any big store. So now Arrow, which they probably had, I don't know numbers, because I don't know how many Best Buys there are, but if you consider sending 2 to 5 copies to every Best Buy in the United States, that could equal out to 20,000 units. Times that by your retail price, you'd be making $100,000 off of each title you put into Best Buy. You take that away, now that's money they don't have. So what do you expect them to do now? And that's kind of like how that worked with a lot of small companies, because we would have been in Best Buy. We were in talks to be in Best Buy with Malum. This was at the beginning of basically the end of 2023. And that was the deal. We were going to be in Walmart and Best Buy. And when we heard Walmart or Best Buy pulled the plug, it didn't really affect us because we weren't in there to begin with, but we realized the loss that we suffered from potentially having that. And they may have accepted more movies from us because Walmart's kind of particular because they don't have a lot of space in a lot of their stores. Best Buy kind of almost consumes everything, and it doesn't matter if it's new or old. Walmart tries to focus a lot on the newer titles, not so much of the older classics, as they call them, but Best Buy did. So anything could be released in Best Buy for the most part, as long as it wasn't, something too violent on the front. But yeah, I talked to Cineverse who have Terrifier and stuff, and that was a huge loss for them because Best Buy was one of their biggest clients, and that's a small company. Cineverse is very small; they're just kind of starting out, and that was a huge loss. And yeah, that got it taken account. So Walmart stepping up and keeping this stuff alive and putting it in their stores, it's a really, really big deal for small companies because that money that we make from those sales, that is a huge it generates so much income that we can put forth to another package of movies from a studio, or fund 5 restorations on 5 movies. And when you don't have that, that's a loss, and that slows your business down, especially someone like Television, because we're too small. We're like literally it's 2 people in the company. That's it. At least Arrow has the Hut Group, which are like loaded people. But now they're a corporation, so that kind of, it sounds like it sucks. I don't know if it does. They lost all their people pretty much. I know Cliff from Screen Factory went over there, but anyways, yeah, it's important to support any physical media in any shape or form is where you get it, whether it be Amazon, Walmart. I prefer you to shop at Diabolic and Orbit and stuff like that because that really helps out small businesses. But if you need to buy it, get it, you know, and that helps tremendously. I don't think people understand. So
Yeah. Well, if
Yep.
it helps anybody listening who might be affected by everything that you just described, I have not stepped foot in a Best Buy since they got rid of their movie selection.
same
Uh,
here. It's the only reason
yeah.
I went.
Yeah.
And I
Same.
went
So,
weekly. I literally probably went to Best Buy weekly, and I have ever since I was a little kid. So I took a little offense when people are like, "Yeah, fuck Best Buy," and I was like, "Wow, I literally bought Code Red DVDs when I was there. I bought VHS tapes at Best Buy. When Anchor Bay put out that VHS of Dawn of the Dead that had that multicolored version on it, I bought it first day. I bought when Return of the Living Dead came out on DVD from MGM because it was so scarce on VHS for so long. A lot of people didn't realize that either, how scarce some of these movies were, even if they were popular. Um, yeah, I bought Night of the Creeps and Monster Squad came out the exact same day on DVD, and I was able to get those, and that's exciting. And they started carrying more stuff like that. They started carrying a lot of Screen Factory titles. So when I would go into Best Buy and I saw The Burning like on the shelf, I was like, that's fucking rad as shit. That's cool. But now we don't have it. And now it's like a big portion of my physical media buying is gone because I would just go in there and kind of shop around and look and take a chance
yeah.
on things. I don't do that like on Amazon or whatever or Diabolic. I go to a thing and I buy a movie and I'm done. I don't peruse for the most part. And that was so much easier. It's just like renting at a video store. You go around, read the backs, look at it, make your decisions. So yeah, it kind of sucks, but I'll never go into a Best Buy unless I got to get a computer.
Yeah. I'm not even sure. It's like a year now or 2 years. Haven't stepped foot in one, and I doubt I ever will.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I haven't been in one since 2020. I don't think so.
So even you predate the loss
Yeah,
of
I
movies.
it's good
it
that
was
you're
for
not
other.
affected because it does hurt. Yeah, it does suck. It
Yeah,
really does.
it does, and I think this is a good way also to get that out because a lot of people, like you said, they don't understand. They don't understand that there's like a backdrop of other people that are affected by these decisions. It's not just
Oh, massively.
Best Buy. Yeah, but people,
Yeah.
normal people. Well, I shouldn't say normal, but a lot of people say, who cares if Best Buy is not selling DVDs anymore, right? Like a lot of people don't think about
Yeah, no, a
the
lot of people said that. And
downstream. Yeah,
I think it's the wrong it's not, you're not really looking at the full picture because even like with filmmakers and certain things we do, it's so many more eyes on the filmmakers for some of these movies that people will take a chance on because your movies are out in general public. Sometimes people buy movies, they're not people like us that have podcasts and movies behind us. They go and buy something just on a whim. And those are the customers that you want because, those are new customers each and every time. So yeah, it's a weird situation. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe they'll regret their decision. I don't know. But I'm glad that I can go. It was pretty cool to go next to my Walmart. That's literally like not even a mile away, and find Malum on the shelf that we put out. That was kind of surreal. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping that it'll come back. I have been told, like I said, I've not been in one, but I have been told that even that space has not been filled. Like the real estate of the store hasn't changed. They
Just
just
wide open.
took the shelving away in a lot of these stores. So they haven't even,
yeah,
replaced anything to, increase a revenue or anything like that.
probably just
If
more
they,
TVs. That's what
yeah,
they sell the most of. So I mean, it makes
and
sense. They may make more off of a day of TV sales than they probably do a week of home video. So
yeah, it's just one of those things that's unfortunate 'cause I love that tangible experience. I don't know, that's because I'm getting old. I'm just one of these old guys that remembers how things used to be in my day. But
yeah.
just the whole process, finding something out in the wild, there's something to it.
Did you ever have
There's
a movie stop around you?
no, I don't think so. I
Yeah, a lot
basically
of people don't know what Movie Stop was, but yeah, Movie Stop was GameStop, but with movies. We had a huge store, man. I swear this thing was big as a Walmart, and it just had tens and thousands of fucking DVDs in it. And it was literally like the best place on earth. And they took used stuff and they would give you store credit, and it was, oh my God, it was a beautiful time, but that's gone. I know that they're slowly coming back in GameStops or something I've heard.
Yeah.
But Movie Stop bought Hastings, or Hastings bought Movie Stop, and then they closed, and that sucks. Hastings was kind of the same thing, but they specialized in, everything for the most part.
yeah. Where I live, there was a time where one of the best place to buy your movies at was our grocery store called Giant Eagle,
Yeah.
and they had a section of Giant Eagle which was called Eagle Video.
Hmm.
And so, where we lived, we had, I had, this is still when we had mom and pop video stores, but I didn't have Blockbuster or anything like that. Looking back, I don't regret that because the mom and pops were so much fun, and like I had a lot of good memories there. I still have a whole bunch of stuff upstairs from my local mom and pop video store. It was called Kiski Valley Video, and but yeah, just the area that I lived in, we had what was called a movie gallery,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it and other than that, like once that went out, that was it. I had no blockbusters or anything. I had to essentially drive all the way to Pittsburgh, or outside of Pittsburgh in the Monroeville area. I would hit Suncoast up once in a while until Suncoast disappeared. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's not a lot of options where I live, and they just keep disappearing.
Yeah.
It's,
No, no,
it's
it's
Goodwill now.
Yeah, no, there's a lot. Some of the antique shops. We have an antique shop here that has so much stuff. But yeah, there's always used movies in those bins, so I go looking. And I mean, we have an FYE and everything. But yeah, where I grew up, we had there was a Blockbuster 3 minutes from my house, but we had a Video Hut. We had I think Video Hut was a chain in a mom and pop sense. And then we had a real mom and pop place. I kind of forget the name of it. We had a movie gallery and a Hollywood Video. And then in Ohio, we would visit for the summers there because that's where primarily my big family lived. And we had a video time, and that was like my youth, and that was a huge portion of my life was those stores in Maslin and Akron, Ohio. We would go there I would go there like probably every 2 days. So yeah, it was rental stores was a big part of my life, and I wouldn't be here doing what I do if it wasn't for those rental stores, because I wouldn't have watched those movies and gained the knowledge and started liking things at such an early age. So
I'm curious. Do you know of the store or have a relationship with out of Pittsburgh? They're called IDES, IDES.
no, I know who they are, but no, I mean I think they probably buy wholesale from us, but I personally no.
Okay, because that's off the top of my head about the last kind of bastion of what we have, at least on the Western Pennsylvania side of things. I'm
Yeah.
sure I go over closer to Philly. There's probably something, but at least my stomping grounds, that's about it. So
Yeah.
I know I have a friend who he lives in Pittsburgh, and basically every day he'll send me videos from IDES. His lunch break is spent in IDES. I've never actually been there, but I
Mhm.
kind of know the whole layout of this store because I get videos every day for years at
Yeah.
this point. Um, but we kind of went off on a tangent there. I was curious. I wanted to ask almost what like the process of with your acquisitions. What is the process like? Is it in my head, in my dumb head, I think it's as simple as, do you email somebody like, about the
Mhm.
movie and make an offer financially, and
I think there's a lot of
or
research that's going to go into this, right? Too, because you got to find like who owns it, the rights,
right,
all that other
right.
stuff, and probably,
Yeah.
probably, I would imagine, like you said, what did you say? Was you say what 7 years for the one movie, or did you say 7 months?
7 years.
7 years, yeah, yeah. And I would just make the assumption, maybe say I don't know if it's a safe assumption to make, but some of the international movies are probably near impossible to.
Yeah, yeah, there's a translation issue sometimes, but also like a lot of European stuff when it's made overseas, things get really jumbled around, and it's kind of hard because a lot of countries their arts are funded by the government, so the government it gets involved, and that can complicate things. And yeah, it's always every movie has a different journey. But to kind of answer your question, yeah, I mean essentially, like, I go through what I like, and it's like, okay, I'm interested in re-releasing this movie because I love it, and that's typically how it starts. So yeah, I mean, you just research to see, like, okay, was this put out by a studio? If so, does the studio own it? If not, let's try to find out who owns the copyright. And typically, the producer will own the copyright, and that's typically who you try to find. But I mean, things can exchange hands so many times. The producer could have sold it off. He could have sold it to another company. He could be dead. It could be next of kin. Do they have kids? I don't know. Let's find out. That sort of things. So, yeah, and then finding material sometimes is a different story because not all the time the producer has the material. It could have ended up in a lab somewhere that now defunct and then shipped off to somewhere else or destroyed, or who knows. So yeah, some finding the material is harder than the rights by a mile. Um, Probably a couple miles, few miles. But yeah, it's a complicated process. But yeah, essentially, yeah, you email them, call 'em. I usually call. It's just a lot easier because sometimes you catch people off guard with this stuff, and plus, email goes to junk, so you can at least leave a
Yeah.
message and tell people that you're not crazy, and this is real and serious. Because sometimes common question is, why the hell release this piece of shit? That sort of thing. So yeah, it's different. Kind of film's a different journey and a different story. But yeah, things can be super easy, and then sometimes it could take years and years and years for something to happen. You know, there's still stuff that I'm working on that I've been working on for you know feels almost like a decade. It's crazy, like, because you also have sometimes they owe fees to something. They owe fees to a lab. For example, so I make a movie in the 80s, and I have all my reels, and the company goes belly up, and I move to Michigan or something, and my reels are at Photochem in Burbank or something. Well, who's paying those storage fees? Nobody.
Right.
So when you go to the rights and you're like, hey, we want to license this movie, you have the material, they'll say, okay, it's been here for 40 years, you owe $20,000. That is a thing too. So and they have the right to hold the movie hostage because you owe their fees. If it depends on the lab. Sometimes they're like, oh my god, we would love to get this out of here, please just take it. And other times you have you may owe fees. I was working on a deal with a filmmaker that was a producer, and they owned, I forget how many movies. It was a lot, maybe 50. And they've been out of the business for close to 20 years. And I was only interested in a few of the movies, like maybe 3 or 4. Um, and we talked, and I realized that they weren't interested in the industry. They didn't care about the movies. They would have just let them burn. They didn't really care. So I said, okay, well, that's a shame. So it was an opportunity to try to grab everything from them because they didn't care, and then give it back to the filmmakers because this person owns the rights. And I called up the lab that had the movies, and they wanted, I think it was like $200,000 to release all of the reels. And I said, that's there's like 50 movies there. It's literally probably taking up a floor of your warehouse. Like, that's insane. And they said, no, we're going to destroy them. And I was like, well, if you're going to destroy them, can you just give them away? And they said no. And we're still battling that out. And I was like, if you're just going to throw them in the incinerator, just let me get a flatbed and pick them up. Like, just throw them in there. I don't even care. Like, we'll figure it out. But yeah, it's like everything's like on the verge of almost disappearing, you know? Um, and a lot of things just haven't been cataloged or done because film restoration didn't really kind of take off until, in LA, probably in I'd say maybe 2008, 2009 is when companies started changing and doing things. Um, and actually doing like scanning and, preserving their stuff. But yeah, it's nuts. So many films are just lost to time because people throw reels out. Producers throw their stuff out because they never thought that, you know, people would be scanning films and putting them on DVD or Blu-ray. No one ever thought that. No one knew that we're going to be doing 4K UHDs. The tape was it. Cassette tape. That was the medium that they
Yeah.
were excited most about. So yeah, it's like a ticking time bomb. So you can't really like slow down sometimes. You just got to keep going, and none of it is cheap, you know. Like, even if you get the movie for free, you still got to pay like, 20 grand to get it out. So it's a rough process. And that's the thing, is I don't think people understand how much it costs companies to do things, and it's hard to, stay alive and stay afloat. Um, so yeah, it's every day is like a fucking war.
Yeah, no, that sounds like it. But it's a war that you're you're passionate about to fight in, and
Yeah,
it
you
has
just need to make some money to keep going. That's the problem.
yeah.
It's a
Uh,
dying industry, sadly.
yes, unfortunately. But again, with the boutiques, it seems like, at least maybe I'm just projecting, and I just think like, well, the next step to this is the boutiques are going to inherit when studios are done trying to put stuff out, they're going to come to guys like you to put out the Aliens restoration, and thank God for that, right? Because you know what. Well, and that's kind of my next point here that I want to ask about is like, what are you doing that's so much better than James Cameron and his shitty AI restorations of these 4Ks for these movies that people have been wanting for years? And now there's this horrible AI algorithm that is painting over these movies versus what you guys are doing in the boutique world, where you had brought up Beastmaster being important to you. I'll tell you that as far as 4Ks goes, it's probably the most impressed I've ever been. Like there was a point where I could count how many nipples hairs Mark Singer had, and I paused it and I did that because I was blown away by how good that looked on my OLED. And I haven't even bought any of these James Cameron 4Ks because everything I've seen about them is like, man, they look just painted on. They've completely saturated and removed every remnant of the film that it was shot on. Like what? So I don't know. Maybe hopefully when the AI stuff doesn't work out for these guys, they're gonna come to you, right?
Well, I mean, there's different scenarios. It just depends on your company and it depends on your director, too. Because I mean, to start with what like we do at Television, I mean, we don't do any um auto generated or upscaling or AI, as some people put it. There are things that you can do. Some labels actually use it, which I'm fully against. Um, uh, it's time savings and money situation because you can have programs will do restorations automatically, and sometimes they look fine, but most of the time they're like probably 97%, maybe probably not even that high. I would maybe 90%. The issue with automated stuff like that, we just call it auto. When you run an auto program like that, the issue is that your AI computer program, whatever it is, the computer can't recognize what is on purpose, what is dirt, what is dust, what is damage, what's a scratch. So sometimes it will try to repair things that don't need to be repaired, or it will erase film grain because it thinks it's damage. So there's a lot of negative with that stuff, and that's something that we're um, we're actively against at Terravision. I'll never use it. I've actually not signed a movie because the director has done something already and that's what they think is the best, and I'll just say no. That's not. And either we scan it again and do ours and we can use yours as a backup, you know um or that's like the B feature or something, that's fine, which I've done before. But if something's like, oh, here's our master, and it's like, wow, this looks like fucking shit, and they're like, we spent $20,000 on this, and I'm like, you might want to get your money back because this looks like garbage. But to answer your question, it just like I said, it depends on the studio. So some studios are very particular about their scanning process and their restoration, and Paramount is very, very good about this. Paramount is very adamant about not using, like, taking away film grain, any automated stuff. They have a whole restoration team that restore a film frame by frame by frame, and that's what you're supposed to do, which I consider what you're supposed to do. And it could take a long time. It could take, if you work straight, 8 hours, 10 hours a day, it could take 3-4 weeks to do this. And you're just fucking hitting the arrow key frame by frame, removing dirt, removing dust, cleaning things up, trying to decide, oh, should we leave that there? That sort of thing. Because there's also like that, um, you know, uh, that instinct, like, oh, should I remove this? Does this look cool? Like, should I keep this like we did with some of our kung fu films at TerraVision, those things were heavily damaged. And I was like, do I try to make this look better? Because if I do, it's just going to take the authenticity out of it. And it's going to look kind of computer generated if I do that. And I don't really, because damage and damage is different from dirt and dust. Dirt and dust is easy to clean up, and that's a process. But if it's a scratch, sometimes that's hard, for the programs to decide what to do if it's doing, the automated. But sometimes as a person, it's like, do I want to try to, if it's a really bad damage, like what do I actually do? And I'm talking about like it looks like cat claws across the screen or something like that. Then it's like that's going to be really tough to repair. Let's just kind of leave it as is, which we did a lot of our like I said, our kung fu films. Um, and then you have filmmakers like Cameron and Spielberg has this, and De Palma has a lot of the filmmakers that have movies with studios. The studio's not allowed to release the movie unless it's supervised from the director, and that's what happened with Cameron. No one's going to release a Cameron film unless he's involved. And I mean, I think from the history of knowing what James Cameron does, he's always trying to be inventive since the beginning of time, from the time when he did Aliens to, Terminator 2, and even going to Titanic and then Avatar, with using his new technology and stuff that was created for that movie. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. But he integrates that into kind of like what movies should look like now. And I mean, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg have done it. And yeah, they want things, they're all about clarity, it seems, and that's not the right thing, because things can have clarity but still look like film or look snowy. And I don't think they like that look. I don't think they like a snowy look that looks like film. So they take that away. Like I watched the Aliens disc. I mean, I think it's a fine disc, but all the film grains were removed and it looks too smooth. Which I mean takes away from kind of the fun of the movie, because you're dealing with a like marine group of people that are rough and dirty, and the look of the film gives the vibe of the movie, and you polish it up and make it look pretty, then it kind of takes that roughness and dirtiness away from Aliens, which I disagree with. True Lies, they just added so much bullshit to it. Half of it looks great and the other half looks like shit. um Wrinkles that aren't there, shadows that aren't there, movement,
Yeah.
because like some of the hardest things for like in restoration, some of the hardest things to do is fire and water. The same thing as when people try to create special effects, because you're trying to make it look authentic. And it's kind of hard when something's moving like this on the screen. It's hard to restore something like that. So yeah, a lot of the, like when the snow is moving in the beginning, any explosions, there's a lot of wetness in the movie and dripping and a lot of that, and a lot of movement, like because like the characters kind of wear like baggy clothes and like baggy suits, and when they're moving it creates a lot of issues. And I saw that on the True Lies disc. I thought the Abyss looked pretty good. And the Titanic disc looks fucking incredible. So I don't know, Cameron like experiments or something. I think each time he wants to do something else. So um I don't know if we'll get a proper, like, actual restoration of Aliens, from a negative or something. There's some scans out there. I have a scan of Aliens that's 4K from a print, and it looks really good. And that's what I'll probably watch rather than the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Yeah.
I have T2. I have like that too. I'll never watch T2 Blu-ray in my or UHD ever in my life again.
Yeah,
I
that
have
was it.
a 4K scan of a print, and it looks fucking way better than anything that's on disc. So
Yeah, for sure. T2 is one of the first UHDs where I was like, whoa, okay. I almost stopped buying all studio releases because of it. I was like, if this is what this is going to look like, then I'm just going to focus buying
Yeah, it
off
just
of
depends on the
boutiques.
studio. Like I said, Paramount does a good job. Paramount probably does the best. MGM does a lot of licensing out. They don't really do a lot of their own stuff in house. But most studios are pretty good because they incorporate the directors, and most directors want their film to look like film and not with artificial enhancement.
Right. Um, well, Brad, we've hit that hour mark that we usually like to stop. It's always fun when you get there this quickly. Like it didn't feel like an hour at all. Um, I would like to, first of all, thank you for joining us. This was cool and informative.
No, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Uh, and as always, I always like to open up the last moments of the show for our guests to, promote anything you have to promote. Tell everybody your links again. Just everything that you guys are doing that you'd like some eyes on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, we, just TerraVision or terror-vision.com. You can get our movies there, cassette tapes, vinyl, CDs. We have a bunch of merchandise as well. We have this is July right now. We have some announcements at the end of July that we're doing. But yeah, we just had our newest slate of stuff in the woods. Family Dinner, Psycho Sisters, and Dawning are our newest titles. And yeah, you just go to the website. We have a membership program too, where you can purchase a subscription, get things way cheaper, right mailed to your door. So there's always that too. So
Yeah, I love that subscription
cool.
availability. By the way, I was happy to see that you guys offered that as well. I was at one time a Vincent subscriber, so I'm looking forward to subscribing to TerraVision here. I think this year I'll have the cash to do it.
Well, I'll tell you, this next one is probably the best time to do it because we have some special things coming out as far as like packaging and limited editions that are going to probably run maybe $40. And the subscribers get them, the 50 tier people which 50 is $1,000, they'll get that for $19.99. And the other consumer is going to pay 40, probably $45 because $5 shipping. So it's a huge deal on certain things. So highly
Yeah,
recommend.
awesome. Yeah, everybody check it out. Thank you again for joining us. I will go ahead here and hit the outro that I'm sure everybody loves listening to. If you wish, you can take off while we play it. Your audio should be good with this
Yeah,
after.
no, I'll stick around. That's fine. Yeah.
All right, cool. Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us. This was a fun one, and hopefully we'll have more shows like this to come because this is my real passion here. And that conversation felt like 10 minutes to me. But thanks, everybody.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.